Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Immortal X-Men with issues number 11 and number 12. This two-part story arc does come right after Sins of Sinister. Now, we have skipped over it, and I might go back and cover it, but for now, I kind of want to go ahead and move on so that we are able to wrap up our coverage over Destiny of X and get into Fall of X, because by March, I think we get a new relaunch of the X-Men titles. Either way, as we dive into today's storyline, we do pick up with Storm currently working alongside with Cypher, Forge, and Rasputin because they have to fix the 4 mutants that were affected by Mr. Sinister. Because remember, when it came to Sins of Sinister, he was able to create a new timeline. Now, the way he was able to do that was he kept using the clones of Moira McTaggart as a way to reset the timeline, but he also had help between 4 different mutants from the Quiet Council that he was able to take over, which was Charles Xavier, Emma Frost, Hope Summers, and Exodus. Now, when it came to the 4 mutants, the reason why he was able to take over them was that he was able to play with their genetics. So every single time they came back to life, he was kind of able to add in different genetics that would give him the ability to control them. Now, with that being said, with him using more McTaggart clones and also the 4 mutants, he was able to create a new timeline. Now, the X-Men were able to bring back the old timeline, but the problem is, though, some pieces of the new timeline that was created by Mr. Sinister did fall back into the old timeline as well. Now, one of the characters that Storm is working with is Rasputin the 4th. Now, when it comes to Rasputin, she is a chimera, and I really hope I said that correctly, but a chimera is a creation done by Sinister, where he takes different genetics from different mutants and combine them together into one body. And so she has different combinations of genetics from different mutants across the X-Men teams. Either way, she also came from that timeline back over to this timeline. Now, she is a good guy. Either way, you have Storm, her, Cypher, and Forge about to begin the process of trying to fix genetics when it comes to the 4 mutants that were taken over by Sinister. Now, when it comes to Forge Machine, it does have the ability to remove pieces of genetics that were changed by Mr. Sinister. But what Forge says next is kind of concerning. And what I mean by that is he says, yes, I was able to remove pieces, but not all the pieces. My machine cannot really go after every single kind of change that was done by Mr. Sinister in your bodies, which means that we have no idea if there is a small part of him still left inside of you. If that is true, you guys have technically been compromised, meaning that you guys can no longer be on the Quiet Council. Now, when it comes to Exodus, he's very upset by this. But for Charles Xavier, Emma Frost, and also Hope, they realize this is the right move to do with them not being on the Quiet Council. Now, technically, they still be on the Quiet Council, but their votes will no longer matter because the thing is, they still have no idea if they're still working under Sinister control. And so with that being said, they're kind of like, you have to sit out future voting sessions, because if you guys vote and you could be working for Sinister, you could bring back that timeline that we were able to get rid of. And this is kind of a huge thing for the Quiet Council. Now, Storm wants to show the 4 members who were affected by Sinister something very important. And this is where you have Storm wanting the 4 people who were affected by Mr. Sinister to sit down and watch a film. Now, this film is actually the timeline they were able to get rid of that Sinister had created. And the thing is Storm saying, I want you guys to watch this film to realize what kind of monsters you were in that timeline. The things y'all did in that timeline to other people, but to also each other. Now, that last part is very important because Exodus did something to Hope Summers, and that is going to be really crucial for the rest of this chapter for today's video. Either way, you have the 4 people who were affected by Sinister realize what they have done, the horrible things they have done in that other timeline. And so they realize their votes cannot matter until they are for sure they are not under his control anymore. To be safe, that timeline does not come back at all. Now, you do have Charles Xavier and Storm go confront Destiny. Now, when they do, you can tell right off the bat, they're very upset with Destiny. But the thing is, they have the right to be, because Destiny knew that Mr. Sinister had the clones of Mormon Taggart and was using the clones as a way to reset the timeline for his betterment, which of course led into the timeline we got in Sins of Sinister. And so when it comes to Storm and Charles, they're like, why did you not tell us? And she said, listen, I can see multiple futures. And matter of fact, when it came to that situation right there, I saw different outcomes. And I realized the best route for us to win was the one we actually took already. And here we are now as winners. If we have taken any other route, things would have not gone our way, and most likely in a worse way. And so unfortunately, you guys may hate me, but at the same time, if it wasn't for me, we would have had loss. And that is huge. Now, we do pick up with Mystique. Now, when we do, she is confronted by Mother Righteous. Now, remember, Mother Righteous is actually a clone, one of the 4 clones that was made by the original Nathaniel Essex in the 1800s. Now, 3 of those clones were based off him. When it comes to Mother Righteous, she is a clone of his late wife, Rebecca. Either way, when it comes to Mother Righteous, she does confront Mystique with a recording that comes from the other timeline that was technically destroyed and came from Sins of Sinister. In this recording, apparently in that timeline, Sinister and Destiny were trying to make a deal with one another to find a way to make sure that Mystique does not die at all. Now, that is kind of concerning because that means she had possibly died in that timeline, or she could have died in that timeline. But we have to remember, some pieces of that timeline did fall into the original main Marvel Universe timeline, which means there could be a possibility that Mystique might die. But on top of that, there could be a possibility that Destiny might make a deal with a Sinister clone or the original Sinister. But then we have to jump over to Hope Summers fighting against Exodus. Now, the reason why those 2 characters are fighting against each other because what happened in that alternate timeline that's no longer around. Now, in that timeline, when it came to Exodus, he had betrayed Hope Summers, which of course got her killed. And so because of that, she no longer wants to be anywhere near him at all. Now, we have to remember, when it comes to Exodus, he looks at Hope Summers as the Messiah for the mutant race. And the reason why, because back in the Messiah Complex event in the early 2000s, you see, in the House of M event, most of the mutants lost their abilities. But after that event right there were no new mutants being born until Hope Summers. And so because she was the first mutant to be born after House of M, Exodus looked at her as a Messiah. But either way, because what happened in the alternate timeline, when she looks at Exodus, she looks at him as a traitor. Either way, she does defeat him, but she does walk away. And it kind of shows more bad blood is being brought in between different members of the Quiet Council. And so then we see Storm and Emma Frost get into an argument. Now, when these 2 characters do get into an argument, it's really more of Emma Frost being upset with Storm because she believed Storm spends too much time on Arakko with their council. If Storm was on Earth with the Quiet Council instead, Storm would have been able to realize that Charles Xavier, Emma Frost, Hope, and also Exodus was being controlled by Sinister. She would have realized realize that they were being corrupted, but only if she was actually on Earth rather than being on Arakko. Now, Storm realized that this is just Emma Frost being upset about the idea that she was corrupted. Now, the thing is, though, Storm also agrees that she's kind of right, because technically, Storm does spend a lot of time on Arakko, but at the same time, it does take her away from her duties from the Quiet Council on Earth, and vice versa, because when she's on Earth, she's away from Arakko's council, and so she realized she really can't be at both places at the same time. We then pick up with Sebastian Shaw, who is currently meeting up with his secret partner, and that would be Mother Righteous. Now, when it comes to Mother Righteous, she's basically trying to, take over Krakoa, and the same thing for Sebastian. Now, when it comes to Mother Righteous, before she leaves, she does give him a list of things that she wants the Quiet Council to approve. Now, when it comes to Sebastian, he feels like her list is a list of things that will not get approved so easily. Matter of fact, he feels like it will not get approved at all. But she says, don't worry, I feel like you and I working together should be able to get all these different things approved so that we're able to continue on with our plans. And so then we pick back up with Storm. Now, when we do, it's really more of Storm kind of telling us, the readers, that she realized that Emma Frost is correct, that technically she does spend too much time away from Krakoa. And so because of that, she feels like she's doing a bad job as a council member on Krakoa. And so what she wants to do is have somebody down there who can vote for her while she is away on Arakko. And so the person that she decides who's going to vote for her is going to be Colossus. But then we jump over to the second chapter where we pick up with the Quiet Council. And when it comes to the Quiet Council, they're trying to figure out who should basically fill in the empty seats at the Quiet Council, new members to join the council. Now, when it comes to Sebastian Shaw, he does have somebody in mind. And of course, that would be Selene. Now, when it comes to Selene, she is an external. Externals are a certain group of mutants who are borderline immortal. Now, sometimes when it comes to Marvel Comics, when it comes down to the idea who is the first mutant, a lot of times it kind of go back and forth between Apocalypse, Namor, and also her. But I want to say in recent years, they had said that Namor was the first mutant. Either way, though, she's a well-known bad guy in the X-Men community, but she had died, and so out of nowhere, she was able to come back to life. But this is Shaw trying to get her to join the Quiet Council. Now, of course, you do have Kitty Pryde and other members say no. So 3 no's right there, except they get 4 yeses in this meeting. 1 from Shaw, 2 from Colossus, except Colossus was just told in the last chapter that if Storm is away, he has the right to vote for her as well. So he holds 2 votes, except Storm is also someone who's supposed to vote for Nightcrawler. And so with her being gone, that means Colossus does vote for both Storm and also Nightcrawler. So 3 votes from him and Shaw makes 4, which means Selene just won, and now she is able to join the Quiet Council. So you have Kitty Pryde getting very upset with Colossus, her ex-lover, because she's kind of wondering how in the world would he allow Selene to join this group. Now, here's the thing, though, because Kitty Pryde has no idea that Colossus is really being controlled by his evil brother Mikkel. But on top of that, Mikkel brought in another mutant known as the Chronicler. And when it comes to the Chronicler, and yes, I know I just butchered saying that word, but when it comes to that character right there, he has the ability to write things into a book. And when he does, those things come to life. And so when it comes to Colossus, he's being controlled by him. He is unable to say anything with his own free will. It's Mikkel right now helping out Sebastian to make different kind of moves to help bring down Krakoa. Now, you also have Destiny say that when it comes to Sebastian, he is working with Orchid, the evil group that has been trying to bring down the mutant race ever since they became a nation. And so you have Rasputin the Fourth come over, and when she does use her powers to read the mind of Sebastian to kind of see if what Destiny said is true. Is he working for Orchid? Unfortunately, when she does read his mind, she can't find any kind of clues at all that prove that he actually does work for Orchid. Now, at the same time, we could say that he has the ability to hide those thoughts in his mind somewhere where no psychic would be able to find it. And so when it comes to Rasputin, unfortunately, she does not find anything at all that could prove that what Destiny said is actually true. Now, you do have Kitty Pryde express that she is very angry with Colossus, but you have Colossus say, look around, Kitty. This entire Quiet Council is corrupt. There's been corruption going on in the Quiet Council for a while now. And so we have to get rid of the ones that have become corrupted and bring in new people to bring back order into the Quiet Council, but to also bring order back into the island. And so it's Colossus saying this, but we have to remember it's not really him saying this. He's being controlled. But at the same time, he's not wrong though, because the Quiet Council had a lot of issues in the last few books of X-Men comics. And so it's kind of like, yeah, what he is saying right now is not technically wrong. But then we pick up with the 4 mutants that have been kicked out of the Quiet Council. That would be Hope, Charles, Emma, and also Exodus. Now, technically, they weren't kicked out of the Quiet Council. They're just not allowed to vote for the time being until they're able to prove they're no longer being corrupted by Mr. Sinister. Either way, though, when it comes to Hope, she hates the idea that she is not allowed to hear in the meetings at all. And so she does use her powers to connect her mind to Colossus' mind. And when she does, she comes to find out they brought back Selene. But also, she found out they are planning on doing something big. And so she is very upset about what she just figured out. And so she tries to go inside the meeting room, the Quiet Council area. Except she's being confronted by Rasputin the Fourth, who says this area is sealed off. It is only for active members of the Quiet Council. Unfortunately, you are not an active member. Either way, Hope is not trying to be stopped. And so it's her saying, I will fight you so I can get inside the meeting and to hopefully stop Colossus from making a huge mistake. Now, Emma Frost also was able to kind of figure out what Colossus is trying to do, but unfortunately, we're not told here. But on top of that, she wants to put Colossus to sleep, except you have Charles stop her, because this is Charles reminding her, we were not kicked out of the Quiet Council, but we are not allowed to basically have any kind of opinions on when it comes to different moves being made when it comes to the Quiet Council or for the island, until we are able to prove that we are not being controlled by Mr. Sinister. Emma, if you try to put Colossus to sleep, they're going to think that you are still corrupted and only going to make things worse for you, but also the rest of us as well. Now, you do have Storm arrive, and when Storm does arrive, she says right off the bat, stop. Because this is her kind of realizing that something big is happening right now with the Quiet Council. But on top of that, she realized she may have possibly made a huge mistake with having Colossus be the one to vote for her, but to also vote for Nightcrawler as well. Either way, she begins to wonder what in the world is going on with Colossus. Now, we do pick up with Destiny and Mystique. Now, when we do, it's really more of the book saying that Destiny powers has changed once again. And what I mean by that is, so when it comes to Destiny, she was always able to see the future. Now, when I say see the future, I really mean more of she was able to see possible futures, not for sure future events. But the thing is, when it came to the Krakoa era and thanks to Sinister and his mini clones of Moira Taggart, she kind of got better into looking into the future and finding out which things are going to happen and which things are not going to happen. And the only reason why she was able to do that because of Nexus points. Those are technically different events that are always going to happen in the future no matter what. And so she was able to use those as a way to kind of figure out which events are actually going to happen. Now, with that being said, we also have to realize that thanks to Sinister constantly resetting the timeline over and over again, but also destroying other timelines, it kind of helped her powers out even more. But unfortunately, when they had stopped him, all those different timelines that they had got rid of had all came back now. And so now it makes it hard for her powers to kind of figure out again which events are really going to happen and which events are not going to happen. But this is also telling us, the readers, that when it comes to Destiny, she's kind of freaking out. And the reason why, because the possibility that Mystique might die. And the thing is, she was told by Sinister in the other timeline, if Mystique dies, things only get worse after her death. And on top of that, it sounds like they would not be able to bring her back to life. And so this is Destiny just trying to make sure nothing happens to Mystique. But unfortunately, she's kind of putting Mystique in this cage in a way where it's kind of like, you can never leave my sight and you always have to be somewhere close to me because the idea that you might die. Now, here is something else though, because Mother Righteous is using her magic powers as a way to play with the minds of Mystique and Destiny. Really more of Mystique, because she makes Mystique go crazy and stab Destiny, which of course kills her off just like that. Now, Mystique is able to bring Destiny back to life, but here comes the problem though, because of course you have Sebastian Shaw appear, and he says, we have to realize that Hope is part of the five mutants who are able to make you a brand new clone body and then download your mind into that new clone body as a way to bring you back to life. But here's the thing, Hope was one of the 4 mutants who were turned evil by Sinister. And so it's also Shaw saying, hey, even though Hope is now supposedly good, well, actually, we don't know she's good all the way yet. How do we know that every single person that she brought back to life could also be controlled by Sinister as well? It's him implying that Destiny could now be under Sinister control. But again, he has no proof. It's just him playing mind games. But we have to jump back over to Storm and also Colossus. Now, when we do, it's really more a Storm finally confronting Colossus about what he has done. But we also kind of find out that Colossus wants to tell the entire world that what the X-Men had did when it came to sins of Sinister. Now, when it came to the X-Men before today, they were kind of like, no, we will not tell the entire world what we did in that event over there. But now it's Colossus saying, no, we are going to tell everyone. But the thing is, he still controls Storm's vote. And Storm was technically put in charge of the entire Quiet Council. So now it's kind of like, yeah, it's going to happen. Now, when it comes to Storm, she's wondering, Colossus, why in the world are you doing this? And he says, you trust me, but I don't trust you. I'm not going to be your play piece, meaning that I am going to do what's right for me and the people of Krakoa, but also the entire mutant race as well. And so, unfortunately, get out of my way and let me do what I want to do. You put me in charge, and now I'm in charge. And so with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.